Welcome, everybody. My name is Bill Spangler-Dunning, and I'm the Regional Minister of Virginia. This is DOCTALKs, which is a ministry of the Virginia region, really for the whole of the church. And today we are excited to talk about the new ALEX program. And this was a dream and a vision, really, I want to say, of our new General Minister. She's not there anymore. She's our General Minister and President, Reverend Terry Hoard Owens. Terry, please.
Thank you so much, Bill, for making this time and space available to us to talk about what we're now calling ALEX. Many of you may or may not know that prior to even going into ministry, let alone being the GMP, I spent 23 years in information technology as a data warehousing consultant. And so when I came to the role of GMP and became we're all familiar with the yearbook and the important information that we share about our church and congregations. Once I got a sort of a peep behind the curtain as to how the whole sausage is made, I was quite frankly horrified, both for the work that my staff has to do in order to make it happen, but also wanting to sort of move us into the 21st century and give us an opportunity to sort of mine that data and get a better sense of the trends that are happening around the church. The yearbook, once it's printed, is almost immediately out of date. There are some reporting capabilities that you can sort of subscribe to, but I envisioned a more flexible ad hoc query kind of capability, and also the ability for eventually for congregations to submit weekly their giving and attendance and do some reporting that could roll up at the regional level and then at the general church level. So we're glad to see folks here from across the church in the US. We're glad to see Jen Garvin, Regional Minister in Canada, and there's somebody else that just popped up, I think, from Nova Scotia. What you'll see today is sort of a little demo. All congregations now have access to the system, and when you submit your 2020 yearbook information, it will be through ALEX this year. We'll still be printing the book, but we need to make this information available and be a much more data-driven church that I think will help us in lots of different ways. So we have been developing this with our vendor, whom you'll hear from in a bit, Sherilyn Williams, in the Office of the General Minister and President, who is our Assistant Vice President of Communications, has become, when Howard Bowers retired, she sort of took on the role of shepherding the yearbook process. So Sherilyn is our project lead on this. And we have been working with a group of 5 regional ministers who've been on a weekly basis for a good part of this year, feeding and looking at the system as it was being developed. We will continue to get input and feedback. A Spanish version has been developed. And so we just are excited. We need to get the word out. We realize that some congregations are not necessarily have the staff or have the technical literacy to do some of this work, and we stand ready to hold whatever kinds of hands we need to hold along with the region. So we wanted you to see it and really help us get the word out, answer your questions. But I'm really excited that this is happening. I'm a total tech geek, and so this has been fun to watch it come to life. So with that, I will turn it over to Sherilyn so that she can actually show you what ALEX looks like. And I guess the first trivia question is, who do you think ALEX is named for? But anyways, I think you all, good disciples, know the answer to that question. But anyway, Sherilyn, take it away.
Okay. Well, welcome. It's nice to see over 100 people on this call. This is great. I'm going to share my screen, so I will become a disembodied voice here pretty quick. And we will start looking at what is available to you in ALEX. I have already logged in as New Galilee Christian Church. However, I probably should have done this to begin with. Your username is most likely, unless you've changed it, the email address that your invitation came to, or the email address that the region has sent us. You have your password. If you have an invitation, didn't get in within the first 24 hours, you can reset your password. You can simply put in your email address here, and then you can do the forgot password. It'll send a notice to that email address, and you'll be able to get in at that point. I'm using the test version. Rob Bloss is our contact at Impact Networking, which is the vendor for this program. And so I'm using his congregational contact. This is how your first screen will look as a congregation. It's slightly different than the regions, but not a lot different. So later in the call, when we talk to the regional folks, you will be able to do all of this and a little more. The first thing you'll see is your homepage. And here it's got some information. It's got I put in some fake attendance here and giving here so that we have something to work with. But you have this information. If you look at this, when you first open it up and you see that something is wrong, or that you've added a website, or that you have a phone number and it's just not in here, you can change that. We would love it if you would. So you would go to My Yearbook over here on the left, and you see all these tabs across here. Anything from stewardship and giving on is going to be for the yearbook reporting period. It's locked at the moment. Right now, though, you can change this general information by going to the right and click on Edit Entry. And anything that has a white box, you can add to or edit. The gray ones are locked. The white ones are editable. So you can do anything that you need to do there. And then you will need to go and submit it. The staff, you can have up to 6 with all their information. Anything you do there, you'll need to go and submit. And you'll see that there's a name here. That's a little bit of security on your part, so you know who changed it, and submit. Since all congregations have a single identity based on your PIN number, and if you're sharing your login name and password, this will be handy so that you'll know if the treasurer changed it, or if the secretary changed it, or if the pastor changed it. So that's what that is about. So you can fix all of this stuff anytime during the year. And when you do and submit it, it will go to your regional office and then eventually to the general church. So that, going back over here to the left-hand column, the congregation directory is always up to date. That's part of the beauty of this system, is that we will be able to update people's contact information in real time. You can see here that First Christian and Anniston comes up first. They come up first in the yearbook too. But if you're more interested in the congregations in we'll say Nebraska region, you can search for Nebraska. You start getting the ones for Nebraska, and you can load more. And say you want to find out if East Lincoln has been doing special youth programming, you can click on the email address, and it automatically opens up an email in your default. So over here, if it comes up with an underline, you'll be able to see, in this case, the region's webpage. So it's a powerful directory with very direct connections for everyone. And this is what your updates will eventually go into when you correct your contact information here in the yearbook record. So one of the things that is very appealing in this program is that you can do your weekly attendance recording. I did a couple of test entries, labeled them as such. So if New Galilee is on this call. I'm sorry, well, but I labeled them as test entries. It's very simple to add an entry. And you can do this on your smartphone because it's all in one screen. So you click on Add Entry. You pick the week. Let's go back and do one November. Say I have Saturday and Sunday services. I'm going to put the numbers for both for that week into one entry. So it's a weekly attendance. Say I had 25. And the reason that I had 25, maybe perhaps somewhere online, and I can make notes. So I can say in person, who knew at the beginning of this project that we would need to be counting attendance this way? It won't total that for you. You have to do your own math. So we'll make that 37. And then down here, you can do your giving, and you can say it was $40. But we haven't mail not received yet this week. Or some other note that says, if it was a high amount, you could make it like if you had $1,000 come in, you could say memorial gifts included or something like that, so that when you enter this data, you'll be able to figure out on easily what any anomalies were. So when you watch your trends for attendance and giving, you can, I will show you just a second. So when you look at your attendance, obviously there's only 2 entries. So this is kind of a week, but I hope you can see where over time you'll be able to see some trends. But if you hover over that dot, that data point, you're going to get, in addition to the actual number, you're going to get whatever notes you put in there. And the same thing goes for giving. When you hover over that, so say you had 15 different data points and one was way out of line, you could hover over that with your notes and find out what it is that is different about that week. Also, it has giving totals. And when we're not quite there, within the next 2 weeks, we should be able to have here what your congregation has given. And those numbers are going to reflect what has been received through Treasury Services. So you don't have to keep track of the special day offerings and things, but you can also see if you had sent something in, if it's been posted. So say we've actually had anecdotally this happen where a treasurer forgot to send, say, the reconciliation offering, and the pastor noticed and kind of went, hey, I thought we took that out. And the treasurer said, sorry, just didn't get that mailed. So it's a double check for you too. And you'll be able to select the time frame. Now, the numbers are not pushed in for this particular congregation yet, but you'll be able to check out the current year down here for these special giving totals. And you can see that there are a number of different time frames that you'll be able to sort on. Again, we have one region done, but it doesn't happen to be South Carolina. So that's the attendance and giving tabs over here. And you can do all of that through this weekly recording add entry thing.
Sherilyn,
yes,
while you're at the giving, I noticed a couple of questions pop up that I think were common questions that the regional ministers asked as well on giving. And the first was, do you want us to include all giving in these numbers as opposed to others? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the goal was the giving category here in terms of what you're putting in was advantageous for the congregations and to provide a window for the regional level to see how all the giving's going. Mm-hmm. So ideally, those are just all gifts as a total on the weekly. It's not broken down or anything. That giving totals on the bottom right is what's coming from Treasury Services, but what you're recording would be your total giving. And then Correct. Somebody asked a question about the date. you can pick a Saturday or Sunday. It's going to roll those up as one total for the weekend. So whichever date you choose is fine. The goal is just for the total weekend attendance or your regular attendance, because obviously some places may have more than one service, or somebody may work on a Saturday and not a Sunday. But that's your total weekend and your total week's giving.
Thank you. I can't see the chat, so
yeah,
thank you very much. I appreciate the teamwork there. And we will have, you bring up a really good point. I need to go back and look at the instructions again, because when we do the yearbook reporting, I'll show you in a minute where that goes. But another thing that you can change now that I want to make sure that you know you can change is here under settings on the left. A lot of congregations are getting their invitation to the yearbook, Alex, from the email that we received from the region. Way back in the summer and fall, your regions asked you for emails and they sent them to us. So that's who we sent it to. A lot of times that's not the person who's going to be keeping track of this. And so we wanted to give you the opportunity to change your contact over here in the settings. You can change your username and the name of the person that's doing this. Change that email to say your office, your general office contact, and you can change the password so that, say, Pastor X gets this and doesn't think that they're going to be the ones to make this happen. They want to have Office Administrator Y doing it. Pastor X gets the invitation. Pastor X can change this to the contact for Office Administrator Y, and then it should work for that Office Administrator. Okay. Also, if you have folks in your region, your church, or your office staff, you can change your preferred language to Spanish. I'm going to save this and then go back and unsave it. So I'm reloading the page, and you'll see that all of the headers are translated for ease of use. But then I can go, that sticks. So if I were to change this, the next time our BLOS congregational, which at this point is me, next time that person logs in, it will be in Spanish. They don't have to do this every time. It'll stick for that user. So I'm changing it back because I am not bilingual. And then, of course, logging out. Let me stop and see if there are any more questions before I go further. Rob, do you see any?
There were some questions in terms of if giving comes in after the week, how should they push that, as well as how the people are counting attendance since we're digital at the moment.
Okay, great questions. If you get another gift that you would rather have it reported in the week prior, you can edit these weekly entries, and you can change this to add the additional gift and save it. So that'll tell you it's been successfully updated and you have changed it for that week. As you can see, it changed it here. So you can see that it did work. Same thing with attendance if you have an off count. On the attendance, this year has been like no other, as we all know. I have been in conversation with some statisticians from other denominations, and we're all having the same issue. So what the common, I believe the common practice is going to be among the denominations so that our attendance stuff matches church to church, denomination to denomination. If you are pretty sure, which most people are, that more than one person is watching a single connection, and the person stays on that connection more than 3 seconds or 20 seconds, it's likely there are you would be able to multiply your online attendance numbers by 1.7 to account for instance, at my house, there are 2 of us watching. But at another house, there may be 1, at another, there may be 3 or 4. So in order to account for that, you can multiply your online attendance numbers by 1.7 and use that number. It's really hard, I know, because there's all kinds of family situations, all kinds of viewing situations. I know we're hearing about people who view the services on Wednesday. So where do I count them? I think from your congregation, you just need to make a decision. I'm going to count everything from Saturday, the 11th through Friday, the 18th. And that's the attendance, or that's the online number I'm going to use for that week. I hope that makes sense. I believe I have that written into some instructions that are posted, but I will review that and make sure that is available to you. Rob, did you see some more?
Yeah, another good one that came in is who will have visibility or access to this information as it's going in?
Oh, thank you. I meant to address that. No other congregation will be able to see your entries every week. I want to emphasize that. No other congregation will see your entries. They will see your yearbook totals just like they do now at the end of the reporting period. But your weekly entries, that's your notes, that's yours. The region will be able to see those numbers rolled up. And the region can also look at your numbers from each week. But as far as other congregations will not be able to see this, and only regional staff, not the board or anyone else, it's only the regional staff. For instance, Bill will be able to see the Virginia numbers. So it's not an open system that way. No one else will be able to see. They can see your contact information. And when we roll up all the yearbook information, which you will have had a chance to review and edit, and the region will have had a chance to review and edit, that's when other people will see, just like they do in the yearbook now. Anything else, Rob?
The only other question, my guess is in some of your instruction notes is this just like weekend attendance or all the activities that may occur during the week? And what if somebody attends 2 services, that kind of thing, how to count them?
I think whatever your practice has been in the past, when we get to the yearbook data, there will still be learning opportunities separate. So like Bible studies, you would put under there. It might be a good time to move to the yearbook tabs just for some clarity around that. When it's time for you to enter your yearbook data, these are going to be unlocked, these numbers. You'll be able to, let's see, there we go. Once it's unlocked, they'll be white. So you'll be able to change these numbers. As you can see right now, you can't change the numbers, but you can see the educational attendance. In the instructions that we're putting together for this is where you put the Bible studies and the book studies and the book groups and the Sunday school attendance, all those kinds of things. Up here, we're talking worship attendance. So the numbers that you put in your weekly recording, if you've always been doing attendance of worship, which is what most people, I'm guessing, most people have been using those for, that's where you put the worship attendance. Education attendance is going to be separate here. You can see that you'll be able to put in all of these other numbers. And then again, these are obviously all locked at the moment, but these undesignated contributions and building fund and designated will self-total. But you have to put in the original numbers Okay, you have to put the numbers in here. They will total. This will, the per capita will calculate for you. Other income you have to put in, but these from here down, the Disciples Mission Fund, et cetera, since those go through Treasury Services, those will be there for you. So you won't have to calculate those. But you can see this one has the per capita total disciples outreach for last year. These are last year's numbers. As you are entering this stuff, and we're going to have a whole other instructional video about this, these tabs. As you enter this stuff, you can go to the submit tab. You'll have a different button down here that will say save this information, but it won't be submitted till the region until you're finished with it and do the big submit at the end. But you can get an idea now of the kind of information that you'll want to have on hand when you sit down to fill this out. Just looking through this here. Okay, and I bet there's more questions now.
Yes, this is Terry.
Thank you.
Sherilyn, there are questions about entering weekly educational events like Bible study. How will people enter that? Is that week to week or monthly, or just keeping track of those various events?
I don't think we allowed for those various events to be in this separated out from worship. I think that may be something we need to talk about, Rob.
Yeah, right now it's just attendance and giving for the, however you guys want to record that in those spaces.
Yeah, but if we're, yeah, I hate to have this whole discussion in front of 100 people. But I think you bring up a really good point that maybe we need to think about adjusting this so that we can also do education weekly. Let us put that on our list of discussion items. Yeah, let us put that on our discussion items. Is there more questions? That's that one.
A question
that's a
about,
really good one.
a question about accessing the instructions and asking whether there will be a help tab within ALEX so that people can directly access those instructions or help.
I don't think we had planned that, but we will look and see if that's a possibility to put a link within ALEX to those instructions. Right now, most of the things like that live at disciples.org/ALEX. But that's a really good point if we could make it into a help tab.
Another question about required versus optional data that's entered. What has to be entered? And this ties, of course, to what we ask people to report for the yearbook, but could you speak to what's required versus optional?
I would say that we would require contact information. We would love to have, I don't know that there's anything in the Disciples Covenant that says that attendance numbers, but it does help us get a sense of where the strengths of the church are, and attendance and giving help give regions a sense of what's going on. I think another part of this particular yearbook is that there are some strengths that we would, excuse me, there are strengths that we would be able to identify if we knew how much time people were spending in mission activities. So while they are not required, we would humbly request that those things be shared. Things like demographics, primary language of the congregation would be very, very helpful to know so that we can better serve our congregations. So this is not just about requiring people to submit their numbers for attendance and giving. This is more a way of getting a sense of how the church can work together better, and getting a sense of where we might have some holes. For instance, if we have a lot of congregations that need a different language for printed materials, we need to know that. It's good to know how many different contexts our congregations are serving in. So while we're not requiring all of this to stay, a recognized congregation by any means, it is helpful, very helpful for planning and for connection, for us to have a good sense of where the church is and where it could be going. So again, we would request that you definitely keep up your contact information. We would request that we would have your participant statistics, partly so that we know what's kind of where we stand. So I don't know if that's really an answer to whether things are required or not, but I do want to encourage you to consider filling all of this out so that we can work together better. More questions?
I think there's also a lot of questions about how you count online participants, in our worship services. And I know that Bill has, we were planning a session on analytics with DOCTALKs that I think would be a good follow-up at some point to this. Mm-hmm. And also just want to remind people what you said earlier, if they weren't on, about your work with the other denominations to come mm-hmm. up with a standardized way to look at that. Be it Facebook, YouTube views, website views, and also just to note that this virtual space is not going to go away. Mm-hmm. And so even as we return, when we're able to return to a more in-person kind of worship, the world is going to almost demand that we continue to have this accessibility to spiritual life together virtually. So those analytics, I think, are going to become important, and we're certainly taking that note and figuring out a way how we can help people understand that measurement, and also perhaps specify, as you did earlier with that formula of 1.7 mm-hmm. Per views, just offering people some common ways mm-hmm. to do that measurement, so that we have a good baseline of everybody kind of thinking about it the same way.
Exactly. Yes. And thank you for bringing this stuff up, because it's obviously a broad project that has all kinds of little nooks and corners. One other thing that I wanted to point out before I quit sharing my screen for the congregations is that under this My Yearbook on the left, there's all these tabs, which right now you can edit the general information, but you can't edit the rest until we unlock them. You can look at your past entries. You can see 2019, what this congregation did in 2019 under these things from historical data. You can look at 2007 for this congregation, what they did in those historic years. So you will have, as a congregation, as soon as you log in, you've got, I believe it's 20 years of past activity that you can look up without pulling all the yearbooks off of your bookshelf. So that could be useful to you as you look at long-term trends. And one more thing, and then I'll shut up and we'll get more questions. Over here, you can export a PDF of basically what you have put in for the year. So when it comes time to do your yearbook report, you can export this PDF and have a written record of what you turned in if you choose. This would also be helpful to congregations in search and call, that you would be able to give a prospective leader this kind of a summary of your last year stuff. And that's available to you right now. So now I will shut up again and see if there are more questions.
There are. If we give a total giving for a week, how will we be able to divide it up into various funds? I think you mentioned how Treasury Services is calculating that based on submissions, but could a congregation in their weekly giving make some of those distinctive records each themselves, basically?
Yes, they would still need to keep some of their distinctive records. The total giving is kind of the overall, and then you would need to keep track of, well, let's go back to the yearbook here. Tab. Whoops. You would still need to keep track of these, the undesignated contributions versus your building fund and capital versus your designated that are within this total giving. So you would still need to do some internal book work. Unfortunately, this doesn't keep your books for you. So you would still need to do some of those breakouts within your own records.
And Treasury Services will automatically be loading those submissions that you've made based on the general church category, special offerings, DMF, that kind of thing.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
The 5 categories you'll ultimately have to still do are your undesignated, your building fund / capital, your designated, your other incomes like rental stuff if you have things of that nature, and then what you designate as your total outreach and mission expenditure. Everything else are either calculations or stuff that will become from Treasury Services.
Yeah, so for instance, I know that congregations I've been involved with, yes, they give money to Disciples Mission Fund and to the special day offerings, but they also gave money directly to the local homeless shelter, and that those kinds of things will need to be tracked for that total outreach and mission expenditures. And it's a joyful thing to see how much of an impact congregations make in their communities with those kinds of things. So.
One more thing on the giving, there's been a request for, and we've talked about this a little bit, importing data from various church membership and accounting systems. That's been suggested as something that would be helpful.
Yes, and that's down the road a bit, but it is definitely on the project list. And we will likely be doing a survey at some point, just a quick one, of what the most common ones are so that we can develop the most common ones. I've heard names like Shelby and CDM maybe, and some others. We'll be doing a little poll to make sure that we're serving the ones that are most common.
There's also a request to adjust the term Native American option to include Canadian Indigenous.
Okay. I am now making notes.
So that's an inclusion. That's should be another option. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, I think I stopped sharing my screen so you all don't have to look at Alex anymore.
There was another question about timeline and when this is going live. When will people start submitting yearbook data?
Oh, excellent. Thank you for asking. Many people already have received an invitation email to log in to Alex. We received the email lists from the regions over the course of the early fall. I think everyone we have an address for should have gotten a invitation by now. Those invitations, though, the registration link, the change your password link, only lasted 24 hours. And so if you have received that but didn't log in right away, there is an easy fix around that to do. You use your email as your username and simply click on Forgot Password. it will send a reset email to your username email. You can go in and reset your password, but you do need to do it pretty promptly. You can't wait several hours to do it. And then you should be able to get in. Some emails may have gone to, I ran across one just today, where the email went to the church treasurer's email, because that's who we were, that's the one that we were given, and they wanted it to go to someone else. That's when that settings tab comes in handy, because you can have the person that it came to go in and change it over to the other person under settings. So that's an easy fix, and you can change it to whoever you need it to be, and you can do that anytime. You don't have to wait on us to do that. So did I answer everything on that one? I think
the other question, I think, in terms of when it goes live, so if you're in it, you can use it. The actual yearbook, in terms of all the other fields being capable of filling in for end of 2020 data, at this point was still your normal reporting time. So kind of in that January to March window is when we'd unlock it so you can start reporting last year's data.
Thank you for finishing the answer, Rob.
Yeah, I think what's important to note is that we hope that, at least I hope, that congregations will get used to just regularly recording this information. And there will still be a time each year when we sort of close the book, so to speak, for yearbook and sort of census reporting, so that we can close the books to say, as of this date, your information, as of March 2021, the door closed, or the books are closed for your reporting for the 2020 calendar year. So there will always be that sort of, final closing of the books for each year. But we hope that you'll just get in the habit of using this and recording that information, so that you pretty much have what you need by the time the deadline for yearbook is there. And also we'll continue to solicit your feedback about, what's working, what other things you want to be able to keep. Not every church has a church membership directory, not system, or church financial management system. I think we said earlier that the data that Treasury Services has, over 20 years of financial data, is being imported into ALEX. So each congregation will already have several years of financial history that you'll be able to look at. So I hope Sherilyn answered the question about who received the invitation. I would say that if you don't have it, or you're not clear about who got it, send Sherilyn an email at
I'm putting it in.
Yeah. cwilliams@disciples.org. I mean, we understand there's transition, and we just need to be sure that we have, if you haven't gotten what you need so that you can log on, just let Sherilyn know, and we'll work to be sure that that's in place.
Sherilyn, is it more helpful for them to send to that email, or for them to send to the ALEX, so it's ALEX specific question?
Oh, that's probably good.
Yeah. Well, I'll take either one. I just want to know that I want to know we need to fix something.
ALEX. Somebody had also raised a question about technical support. So in the chat there, Sherilyn did put alex@disciples.org, which is where most of the communication about ALEX from ALEX will come from. And then Sherilyn's personal email at cwilliams. But Sherilyn, do you want to speak about, I forgot the question I was just going to.
Well, I will say that,
my head.
Yes, you can email ALEX, and the beauty of that is that if for some reason, people around the office know I use this all the time. If I get hit by a bus, someone else can see the email if it's sent to ALEX without them having to figure out how to get into mine if I'm laid up somewhere. But either way, I'll take the email. You can send it to my C. Williams either way. But we do have at least John Goebel, who is Vice President for Treasury, is also involved in this project. And so somebody can get back to you if you send it to ALEX. I think I'm caught up on those at the moment, but I have a feeling after this, I'm going to have a whole bunch of that in that box. So, which is just fine. We're kind of learning as we go here. on what you will need for tech support. So please feel free to reach out. It's kind of my job. So that's it.
And there's really 3 levels of tech support. Sherilyn's kind of your first line of defense. And hopefully in another few weeks, we're going to empower her with a few more self-fix tools. And then if she can't do it, she raises it up to me as the solutions guy from Impact Networking. And if it's something that's legitimately technical, there's a code problem, then I bring it to my team of developers who I have brief communication with every morning for actual fixes.
Okay, I see a question that will the weekly submittals be compared or balanced with quarterly reports? I think that's kind of up to you. I don't think we're going to be, downloading quarterly ones as through Alex. There may be some regional process that they'll want to do, but as far as I know, that's not a function of what we're planning to do with Alex. So
I think it is important to note that the giving and/or attendance, but giving specifically, and Alex, in terms of the weekly, it's not an accounting software. The goal is just to give a lot of visibility or tools maybe to people who also don't have that type of software available to them, but it's certainly not an accounting system in terms of putting in your total weekly giving.
Okay. Well, I don't want to cut off any more questions, but I also don't want to keep you to, if I know a bunch of people had to leave right about now. So,
Sherilyn, I do have a
yes,
and a
please.
question. Really, as a regional minister, the one thing a lot of churches ask, or is, and I think Alex is going to address that. It's beautiful what you said earlier, is that sometimes as ministers, we don't always, we think we give money, but we don't exactly know where to go to check that. But you showed on Alex, where it's just right on that screen, where it would let us know what we sent to Christmas offering, or what we sent to, so that we could check that very easily with access to Alex, which isn't so easily done with the old way we were doing Yearbook. So I just want to say I love that feature. As a regional minister, that's less work for me. That's what I'm about. So.
Yeah.
And I'll let everybody know that giving information is being pulled twice a month. So if you put something in on the 10th and you don't see it updated on the 13th, don't be surprised. But John told us, based off the amount of time they're actually updating their books, twice a month poll to update, that's probably sufficient.
But that's a whole lot better than once a year. I'm sorry, Terry.
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah, time delay here. The other thing is, I think there was a point raised about importing from the various church management systems, and that's certainly something that's on our list, and hopefully having the information available in terms of what Treasury Services has, knowing when they post helps to ensure that there's some consistency between what you're looking at and the numbers that they're looking at. We're also looking at reporting from the system. There are some graphics that you'll be able to see that correlate with, you've seen some of them, the weekly arc, with so little data imported input yet, those graphs are kind of simple, but those graphics will be helpful. But we also have someone working on just a whole new battery of reporting based on congregational needs, denominational needs, et cetera. And so we'll be continuing to look for your input as to the kinds of questions that you want to be able to ask from Alex, so that there's both some standardized reporting that you don't have to code, you just click on a button and maybe enter a couple of parameters, but also a more robust kind of ad hoc reporting capability based on this information. Down the road, we hope to be able to include the information from the ministerial directory at the denominational level, and create some mechanism by which we can allow clergy to be in touch with one another, or people to see some baseline directory information about all of our clergy who hold standing. So ALEX will eventually become sort of one repository. We've got this other financial repository. And so what data warehouses do is they take a lot of different sources of information and give you the ability to correlate and mine them, ask questions, recognize trends, that sort of thing. So I think that's where we're headed. And yeah, there's another comment about OGMP report not matching their records. And when you do things directly on the website versus when your congregation has sent them in, at least now, at least there should be at one point, at least during the month, when all that stuff should reconcile. So we're certainly going to be looking at all of that. So.
And I'd like to emphasize Terry's point about this is just a starting point to what we could do with all of this data. Being able to, I think I mentioned earlier, being able to know if a majority of our congregations are truly in a rural or urban context, and those kinds of things will help all the ministries a lot in partnering with you and as congregations. So anything else? I'm seeing the chat has slowed down a bit. I'm going to be going back through those to see if there's anything we missed.
One final just acknowledgement to the congregations in various regions, including Southwest Virginia, Kentucky, Indiana, where regional staff people and members of congregations have did some early testing this summer. So I just want to send a shout out to all of you who were early guinea pigs, so to speak, or testers for the system, particularly those regional staff persons who understand their need to be on top of this so that they can work with their congregations. All of that has been extremely helpful, along with the regular participation of about 5 or 6 regional ministers representing the College of Regional Ministers, to ensure that all those perspectives have been taken into account as we move through this.
Well, if there aren't any more congregational specific questions, I'd like to, I think Terry has another meeting and anyone who is, I see here again, we plan to link this recording to the disciples.org ALEX page. So we should have that up whenever Bill can get me the link. So, but it will be somewhere in that, on that page, most likely a button. And so the next step is we say goodbye to Terry and anyone else who needs to get off. And we're going to stay on with regional staff for just a little bit and look at the regional dashboard. So I'm going to give us just a couple of minutes to kind of reset here while I get my regional version up on my screen. So thank you again for all of you who have stuck with this and are working at it. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you all. Take care. See you around cyberspace.
Stay safe, people. Stay
safe.
Yes, yes, please. Yes.